My name is Dave Balmer. I'm a developer evangelist with Research in Motion. That's the Blackberry folks. So it's a relatively short talk, although there's less of an audience than I think we'll actually have time for questions. So, but if you do have any additional questions that we don't cover today, just tweet it to me and no problem, I'll get to you. So I'm an HTML5 advocate. I'm a huge JavaScript fan. Been fighting the good fight of web-based apps versus native apps over in the mobile space for quite a few years. I recently joined Research in Motion, mostly because BlackBerry is putting together their BlackBerry 10 OS, which is a completely new OS built from the ground up. And one of the features that attracted me as a web developer, we have really good HTML5 support. And if you haven't tuned into BlackBerry in the last couple of years or so, which I imagine some developers that might be the case, now is the time to go check it out because we're actually doing some really exciting stuff, especially if you're a web developer. So actually, one of the things, if you guys are familiar with Html5 Test, you guys familiar with that? Okay. So this might be of some note. What Html5test.com does is it goes into your browser and checks for HTML5 feature compliance and comes up with a raw score with a theoretical cap of 500, although it does allow some bonus points. And one thing you might notice in this comparison, so over here on the left, surprisingly, is actually BlackBerry 10. We are almost near the cap currently, and we haven't even launched yet, so this number is subject to change. So this is one important thing. If you walk away from this talk with nothing else, the fact that we are fully committed to HTML5, and the numbers show it. So let me get back to my little talk here. And this is all really good. Like I say, I'm a huge HTML5 advocate. BlackBerry 10 has awesome HTML5 support built into the browser. We give web apps the same first citizen class as we do native apps. We have a product called Webworks, which is very similar to PhoneGap or Cordova if you use that. And we've actually had that on our platform prior to BlackBerry 10, which allows you to take your HTML5 apps, bundle them up as a native app, and put them in our catalog, and gives you all the same advantages that the native app would have. If you're doing subscriptions, monetization, in-app purchases, all that stuff is exposed to you the same as if you're on a native side. But actually, I didn't come here to talk about any of that. I'm actually here to talk to you about something which I only recently found out myself, which is our native SDK. Now remember, I'm a HTML5 guy, so this takes a moment here. Our native SDK actually has JavaScript support built in. Has the V8 JavaScript interpreter. So when I discovered this, it's kind of a wow moment, but it's also, in explaining to people, I've had people say, well, why would you do that? The basic reason would be you want to get, say you have an app that really needs a little bit of help from the native side. It's more of a hybrid application where you want to more deeply integrate some stuff on the C++ side, for example. JavaScript has its limits, and if you have a real performance-intensive hunk of code, sometimes integrating native in is a way to do that. So yeah, we'll talk about more about it in a second. But first, I want to explain a little bit more about how I sort of came into this. So I'll tell you a little story. It's story time. So a couple of weeks ago, I was actually in training for our SDK, and I was mostly paying attention. As a JavaScript interpreter, I respect C++, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, I get giddy, discussing it. And then as the course went on, and it was still the morning of the first day, I heard the word JavaScript pop up. The trainer bless his heart, was trying very hard, to get through some of us web people. And so it's, C++ this, and Qt that, blah, 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 JavaScript, blah, 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 QML. Wait, JavaScript. I know that. Wait, go back. And it turns out that, we have the V8 interpreter built in, and even better, it has, on the native SDK side, now again, we still have the full web stack to build complete web apps, but on the native SDK side, it is possible to write an entire app completely with JavaScript and have access to all of the really, really close to the metal C++ stuff. So it's almost like taking JavaScript out of the browser and plugging it into the native OS, which is something a little bit different. I've seen approaches like that on other platforms, but they're all done with third-party integration. We're actually committed to it enough that we bake JavaScript right in. So this is my little cartoon attempt here. Yeah, right before we started. We had the same question, so it's good. So I'll give a quick overview of Cascades and why it's that awesome. So this is a picture we have on our developer site, and I'm not sure actually if it's cheesecake of some sort or a type of pie, but it is some sort of fluffy slice of something. And up on the top we have our framework called Cascades. It allows you to build Blackberry 10 native apps with the native UI and the native API calls, and C++ and JavaScript. And then down below that, we have a fully POSIX compliant C++ development. So anyone on your team that's actually hardcore C++ developer, they're going to be right at home. That's where you get your OpenGL, OpenAL. Any other C++ libraries that you have that are POSIX compliant are going to run and work on our system. But anyway, that's C++. I'm a JavaScript guy, so back up a little bit. So using this Cascades framework, which you can access through JavaScript, gives you the full look and feel, all the APIs, direct access to all the hardware stuff. We expose a lot of that through the web API, but you still have the browser kind of in between you and the OS. And sometimes that's not always what you want. So this gives you a way to sort of go through that. Cascades is built on top of Qt. So anyone who's done cross-platform development with C++ is probably familiar with Qt. Anyone? Raise your hands. Couple nods. 3. Oh, like everyone in the room. Awesome. Yeah, okay. And so a lot of the concepts from Qt will carry over. Now, if you're developing through Cascades, we have made a few changes and improvements and alterations, which, as a JavaScript guy, a little bit above my level, but it's all on the developer site and let you go through that. So here's the sort of overall architecture. If you're a JavaScript developer, this is the mental map that is there. Basically, to me, as a JavaScript developer, I've got JavaScript on top. I can talk to C++ and a UI description language called QML, which we'll get into shortly. And all that feeds into our Cascades framework. And basically on down the stack. And to me, it starts to sounding more like blah, blah, blah as further we get down. Like, I'm up on the JavaScript side. Like, I just want to make cool stuff on the screen and sound effects and, yeah. C/BPS. So the blocks in gray are things that had explained to me and may have very limited knowledge of. I'm actually not sure what CBPS is. Those of you who actually know more cross-platform C++ development probably do. That's why I put it in gray. You're not supposed to ask questions about gray items. You know what? I should put that on the slide. It should be a disclaimer. But yeah.
Can I ask you, what is the internet access code? No, like customer name and access code.
Your name and then 40INC.
No, it's different 40INC. 40 and 40INC. 40I.
D is in dog, not B is in boy. Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
So Dave, when you make a call in JavaScript,
Sure.
is it actually going down into the native layer, newing up a button, and then
Yes, but you can do that, and you can also, through QML, have it be even easier.
Is QML a markup language?
Yes, and we're going to get into it. Well, you know, you might be. You might be when you see it. You haven't met it yet. You just know it by name. Yeah. So another way of looking at this, again, JavaScript on the top. You know, as a web developer, this looks very familiar to me, CSS3, HTML, you know, the DOM, and I've got the browser underneath. So we're basically saying, in this case, for writing native apps, instead of the browser, you've got the Blackberry 10 OS, which you can, you know, connect with more intimately. Instead of HTML, you're using another markup language called QML. Instead of C++, wait, what was that? Yeah, instead of CSS3, you have the standard BB10 UX controls built into it. Instead of the DOM, you've got, you know, instead of just messing around with the DOM and having those limitations in the browser, you can go straight down and communicate with C++ code and vice versa. Yes, JavaScript rules it all. It can. It doesn't have to. But if you're a JavaScript developer, this is how I like to look at native development. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. I promise. I swear.
Write C++, you still need JavaScript?
No. This is, as a JavaScript developer, the way since I'm JavaScript-centric, I have a JavaScript-centric view of the world. This is, you know, how the architecture loosely looks to me.
So the JavaScript you develop here can be used for the mobile web as well?
Yeah, some of the JavaScript code you certainly can share, but anything that manipulates the DOM directly or uses, you know, standard browser sorts of things, that's browser specific. So if you have, you know, JavaScript code that you've written that does, you know, business logic, you know, things that actually get your application running that have less to do with, you know, moving DOM nodes around and, you know, changing CSS class names and things like that, that sort of code, definitely you can use both in our web stack and over here on the native side. So before we get too many more questions, let's go through a hello world, and I think it'll answer a lot of these questions as we go. So what this is QML. And when I saw it, to me it looked like HTML and JSON had a baby. And we'll see a little bit more of that as we go. It's very similar to JSON. In concept, you'll notice a few differences like line ending characters and things like that. It's a bit like that. So here we have a very simple thing, and all we're doing is, and no one here you know, you don't know QML, but you can tell we're creating a page. You know, it has a label, and the label says "Hello World." So we pretty much know what that's going to do. So and you can do other things with this too. You can add in, you know, formatting and things like that. It's very important in the UI. Yeah, it looks a bit like CSS, only not. Some of the things to keep in mind. This still talks to C++ underneath the hood. So you are going to find some things like this horizontal alignment is, you know, this constant called horizontal alignment.center. This is more of a C++/Java, you know, sort of way of doing things than CSS, where you actually. Yeah. So what happens is that this actually gets compiled into the UI. So there's actually C++ code sitting there that gets compiled, that gets baked into the UI. So it ends up being very fast.
So it would render UI.
Correct. And then, so I'm going to pop over to our editor real quick. Now we actually ship with, so when you download our SDK, we have our own special build of Eclipse. And the reason it's a special build is we've added some things that, I don't know all the details, but our engineering team wasn't able to put in through just standard plugins. So this is very deeply integrated with Blackberry 10. So here we have, you know, we're editing code on this side. This should look fairly familiar.
So this is the plug-in, or this is a completely
It's a completely separate build of Eclipse. Yes. So what we have on this view, we have our editor. And then over here we have our preview. And the nice thing about the preview, say for example here, I don't know if anyone in the room can read that.
No.
Yeah, me neither. It actually says hello world, and it's in very small type, and it's been zoomed out 50% and then thrown up on the screen. So right away, looking at this, we can tell that's really not something that we're looking for. Now, if you know all of the QML properties, you can change that very quickly and just type it in. One of the nice things that an IDE brings along. Now, I'm not an IDE fan, but we're learning something new. This over here is actually kind of handy. So over here on the QML properties, so here we are inside this label. And one of the things we can change over here on the right, say we got font family, font size, and line width. So let's change the font size. Boom. So now we can actually see that in our preview. We don't have to go through the compile process that you do, with once you get to the C++ side. This gives you immediate feedback. This is very familiar. That sort of loop of I change something, I see it. I change something, I see it. That's very familiar to those of us, that have been more in the web development side of things.
I'd be curious to see how you handle the image because, it looks a little bit similar to Balmer, but Balmer to do an image is very, tedious.
Actually here, so if you look over here on the left-hand side, so the question is, how tedious are producing images? Container, oh, this looks like an image. Image button, image view. So I can come over here and actually drag this into our code. Now we've got an image view. And again, we can go over to the properties. We can fill in the image source. Well, I'm not going to do that right now. But basically, you can drag and drop all this stuff, specify all that in the properties, and it's done. Including things like alignment, whether you want it to stretch, minimum size desired, or minimum size requested, maximum size desired, all that kind of stuff you can set up automatically.
And you don't have to actually, like create a memory point and.
Yeah. So the question is, do you have to do the C++ sorts of things that you're used to? Allocate memory, create the object, well, no, this takes care of all of that for you. This is more higher level, so you can equate this, like I said, sort of a JSONized version, in my mind, of HTML. This is very similar to, setting it up in your markup language. So let me get rid of that real quick. But we still haven't seen really any JavaScript. And so what I have here is a very simple example. I just uncommented because, it's only a half hour. But we've added a button. We set its alignment, and we set an on-touch event. Now, everything between these two brackets is all executed as JavaScript. And it's not just on events. It's everywhere. So, for example, I could put a function call here, like, if I created a function somewhere called localize, I can do that. It's built in. I'm going to take that out because localize doesn't exist. But anyway, so there we go. If in my application I had set up localization, you can, like I say, the point is you can execute JavaScript anywhere in this, anywhere in the QML descriptor. So let's run this thing real quick. Now this will look more familiar to those of us who have done some of the C++ type stuff. Going to test it on device, run simulator, compile, install on device, and run our debugger. But anyway, here it is. I have this running on a simulator. And again, after we're done with the talk, I actually have what we call our dev alpha device. Now this is not the final production device, but close enough to develop on.
So that's in VMware.
Yeah, I swear I will cover everything. I have so many things in these slides, I promise. Sit tight, sit tight. So here we are in our simulator, and this little arrow is meant to emulate, where your finger might be moving. Pretty typical stuff. And so we have this button, and it has some JavaScript, and when we click it, thank you, and good night. Yes, so, right, yeah, okay. I'm here all week, for the rest of the week anyway. So there's our first app. And literally just sitting in a training class, spending 10 minutes in going, I just wrote a native app. I just used JavaScript and this thing, which looked an awful lot like JSON, which I already know. Like, this is too easy, right? There's a catch, right?
Easy is good.
Easy is good. Turns out there's not really much of a catch. There's not much of a catch to it. And we're going to go over some more stuff here. Da-da-da. There we go. All right, so we've gone through our hello world. We added some JavaScript, and we can breathe a sigh of relief because, yes, we did actually discover JavaScript in there. Now, again, we're showing in this example here that JavaScript is baked into the onTouch event, but it can be anywhere. It can be anywhere where you're setting values for any of the properties in the QML. Additionally, you don't have to embed all the JavaScript as you go, because that's messy. You can put out your JavaScript, modularize it however you want, set up your own JS files and include them, which is something you'd expect from a proper development framework. Is my microphone still working? Yeah. Okay, excellent. Yeah, so this is QML. It's more declarative. But the nice thing is that you can also declare your JavaScript in there as well. So I'm going to go over some more demos. And all of these demos that I'm going to be going through, you can actually pull from developer.blackberry.com/cascades. And then you can do /sample apps. And that'll get you even closer to that. So let's do that. And again, I'm going back to our IDE. Now, I've already imported some of these projects. And when you go to download these yourself to try it out, one of the things that you're going to have to do, if you've used Eclipse before, you're already familiar with this, with the notion of importing a project. So you've got your zip file, or you have a directory that you've downloaded, and you come over here to File, Import, Existing Project. And again, if you've used Eclipse before, this is pretty normal stuff. Right, so downloads, here I've got a bunch of downloads. Yeah, so you just click a directory and say OK. And you'll end up with kind of what I have here. Basically what I've done is I've just downloaded a lot of the demos, put in a couple of myself. These are all part of the same workspace. And so let's take a look at a couple of these. One of them is, what's a fun one? OK, so we'll look at one called Poem Maker. And I'm just going to run it real quick just so you can see what it does, and then we'll come back and check it out. Again, we're building, and right now it's putting it on the device. In this case, it's our simulator. And if you want to put it directly on device while you're developing, that's perfectly OK too, of course. You can plug in with USB, and we also support Wi-Fi. So if your device is on the same subnet as your development computer, you can do it completely wireless. And let's check this out. OK. So this is a silly little app. And what it does is you, here we get the thing on there. You squeeze a bulb, it generates poetry. It's just a little bit worse than those little refrigerator magnets, that we've all seen. But it's kind of fun. And one of the things that you'll notice is, and again, this is on desktop, but the performance is very comparable. It's really fast. Now, I love CSS3. I love CSS3 transitions and animations. Even GPU accelerated, sometimes you run into some limitations. So even something as trivial as this, it's kind of nice to just let the processor go, with completely binary code. If you're writing games especially, there's a certain level. Start with turn-based games and card games. There's a certain level where you want to start doing more native type stuff. But something like this, the fact that we have JavaScript built in, means you can take that slider quite a bit further down before you leave your comfort zone. So you can do more sophisticated, immersive titles while still using JavaScript.
So the device is GPU accelerated?
Yeah, the device is GPU accelerated. That was the question. So we have a very simple app. And so let's check out a bit of the code on there. So now, if you go in our source folder, oh no, it's C++. Yeah, we do have some C++ in here. And this stuff that's in here is all generated. We didn't actually have to create this. So we can safely close. Correct. So we can safely close this source file. switch over to our assets, and we can look at, say, main.qml. And you can see one of the things that we're doing, we're defining our UI. We've got a page, a container, we've got an image button. And again, all of these properties work with this property inspector. So if I wanted to make a quick tweak to something, I don't have to remember all the possible properties for a particular type of control. If I'm using this IDE, I'm good to go. And if you notice, we have some inline code. So again, here we have a on touch, and here's a hunk of JavaScript that it's running. Same sorts of stuff that we've just gone over, there's just more of it. Here's another example of some inline JavaScript that's not a function-based. So here we're actually setting a property value, but we're actually using a hunk of JavaScript after it to actually set the value, and it's actually computing it. So, and there's no way I can show you guys everything that we can do, but I'm gonna try at least, get you excited about it. So one of the things we have at the top of here is import poemgenerator.js as poem generator. And if we look down here, yes, there's just a straight JavaScript file. And again, you can incorporate these in your project. You can use these to organize your project better, because putting inline code everywhere kind of sucks. I mean, that takes us back to the days of having inline styles and things like that. It's nice, it can be convenient, but yeah, we also give you the way to actually organize your projects like, proper developer should. So this is very simple. We just have some arrays, and for each thing that it does, it goes through and picks a random number and pulls it from the array and builds our poem out of it. Pretty easy.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Anything you don't support in JS?
Yeah, is there anything we don't support in JS? So the short answer is no. And the reason is because anything that you can do in C++ on the native side with our native SDK, you can expose to JavaScript very easily. And unlike some other systems that I've used in the past, we don't have a really awkward conversion bridge going between them. So the performance hit for doing that is turns out to be extremely small, as in not bother, it's not worth computing. And again, that's because we have the QML stuff has the V8 interpreter built in. It's not, moving data back and forth.
But would you say you support 100% JavaScript, whatever you write in JavaScript, it will work?
Yeah. So. Yeah, whatever you write in JavaScript will work. Now, the only difference is coming from a browser world, again, there's no DOM to manipulate, right? So that's not there. Things like XML HTTP requests, that is something that's browser specific. There's a native version of that, the JavaScript wraps that you would use. Again, we're using JavaScript to do native code, so what you're doing with it is a little differently, but you're still using JavaScript at its core. Okay. Yeah, so the question is it smart enough to handle typing? Yes, talking to the C++, it is smart enough to handle the typing, because it still runs it through the JavaScript interpreter, which we all know handles type conversions automatically. So again, that's one of the things people don't necessarily like about C++, is it's a strongly typed language. You get compile errors, you're not sure why, you got to look up the library and say, oh, it's expecting this type, so I've got to cast it to this, but the cast won't work the way that I want, so I've got to use, overloading on this and that. There's points in there that unless you've done a lot of C++ development, can be tedious, and that's one of the reasons that JavaScript itself has actually, succeeded pretty well over these years. So that's the whole point. You get to reap the benefits. Yes.
The browser environments and other environments that wrap JavaScript in things like Node.js.
Yes.
They provide an event loop to allow you to do asynchronicity in JavaScript.
Correct.
Does this environment also have asynchronicity built into it?
So by default, so the question is, is there the ability to do asynchronous stuff, basically threading is what we want. By default, all of the UI is in its own separate thread. So for the most part, you can sit down and code for about 90% of the types of apps that are out there or more. You can sit down and code, and it's going to do pretty much what you expect.
Well, that's a good question for a segue question. So if I do...
One sec, let me finish. So I feel like I'm at the debates. One second, sir. So beyond that, you have all the threading that you have available with a POSIX compliant C++ compiler. So if you want to create some additional threads that are specific to your app. Say you've got a background downloader. You can write a piece of that or use some of the native calls, a few lines of code, wrap that, expose it to the JavaScript layer, and then on the application side that actually consumes and uses that, that's where you put all your business logic that actually takes advantage of that thread. So again, anything that's not already exposed through JavaScript can be, and it's actually relatively trivial to do so.
So my question is, if I write asynchronous code in JavaScript.
I'm actually over 5 minutes, so let me try to go through a couple more of these things, and I swear we'll have questions after. All right, thank you. So a couple others. Since we are short on time, what I'm going to do is just sort of show off a few of these things. Some other apps that were created the same way. And again, this is a simulator for our Blackberry 10 Dev Alpha device. Oh, here's a favorite. Pull my beard. Basically, you pull his beard, and on the device, he says, thank you. Right? Very simple. But the point is, I mean, you know, in C++, it would be, you know, 50 lines of code. In JavaScript, it's 2, you know, JavaScript with QML in this particular case. I've got a couple other in here. This one is a little more, and actually, let me switch that for a second. So this one goes over more of the UI type stuff. And this is kind of like a kitchen sink. Basically, it goes through all the different UI things that we have available. I'm going to pop out of that, because that's boring, actually, now that I look at it. Another one we have here, stamp collector. So this one on the surface actually looks like a boring app, but underneath it, we're using all JSON data. So built into this, you know, these are the things we like. We're web developers. We use JavaScript. We like JSON. It makes us happy. So this whole app is built with QML and JavaScript, and all the data is JSON that's being consumed with it. And again, this is one of those just a few lines of code type of apps to set up. And again, you automatically get all the Blackberry 10 UI for free. You don't have to have a separate JavaScript library to trick the DOM into making things look an awful. I'm a HTML5 framework developer, so I've done this. Yeah, it is kind of nice to just have that stuff built in. Like, it would be nice if browsers just sort of had deeper UI built in. And this is sort of like that, if that were, you know, in the world. All right, so I have to cut those short a little bit. Sorry about that. But again, if you want to corner me, I have a device where I can show some of these off, and you can, you know, play with it and get a feel for performance and all that kind of good stuff.
Do you have a kitchen sink?
2 minutes. 2 minutes. Yes, yes, we do. 2 minutes. Anyway, so again, I just want to sum up. JavaScript developers, you get complete access to everything that we would have on the native side to build your native apps. You can make your app completely powered by JavaScript in most cases. And in the cases where you can't, you might have a little bit of fun exposing some of the stuff that's in C++ on up through. Also gives you total access to all of our Blackberry 10 APIs. So calling other apps, you know, contact pickers, you know, camera app, all that sort of stuff is also built in. And this sort of page is also very similar to some of the capabilities that you have through Webworks if you just want to develop purely through HTML5 and JavaScript. So, but basically just saying we're not taking anything away by doing native JavaScript. And C++. So I think we covered that pretty well. Basically, to get started, if you're curious, go to developer.blackberry.com/cascades. And if you're really nice and ultra cool and super enthusiastic, get one of our Dev Alpha devices we're testing on. In particular, if you already have an app that you've either developed into the platform or have in mind that sounds really cool, see me after. And we also have a simulator which requires VMware. Or, depending on who you are, hey, yay, it uses VMware. I'm already using that today for compatibility testing. Which, if you're on the Mac, you probably already know that it has a 30-day evaluation, and it costs you a few extra dollars, and on Windows, it's free. And then there's one additional step, which luckily we have some how-to videos online. It's one of those things that since I joined Blackberry, this was only a few months ago, I'm hoping that we improve, and I have had word that eventually this will get smoother. But because of our security model, we have a notion of signing apps, debug tokens, things like that. And again, there's how-to videos which will help you through that. And more importantly, on the native side, the IDE will actually walk you through that process. So there's a little wizard which will help you through that stuff. Okay, now, Q&A.
So could you switch back to the previous slide?
Is that your question?
No, that's a request.
Okay, so the request is, can I switch back to the previous slide? This one,
Yeah,
useful links. All right.
the one with request free assign user, turn on the broadcast mode.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, oops, this one.
Okay. While you're writing those down, any other questions on this stuff? Okay. You, sir, in the, everyone else quiet down. You, sir, in the back.
You said that we've got this JavaScript API that we can use, and it is not cross-compiled to native code. It's interpreted live via the interpreter. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So what sort of benchmarking have you done about the performance? Because there's a lot of noise being made about like Firefox OS is doing something similar, and a lot of people are dubious about whether or not JavaScript can handle the performance. So what
Sure.
sort of performance benchmarking have you done to see whether or not a full native app can stand up to a full native app that is C++?
Okay. Yeah, so the question is, if you write everything in JavaScript, is your performance going to suck? But a little more specifically, have we done real benchmarking to back up the funny answer I'll give in a second? So the funny answer is no, performance is really cool. It totally doesn't suck, dude. As far as benchmarking beyond that, I don't know. I know that our engineering team does do that internally. I don't think that we've had any ready to publish, and probably won't until we get closer to product launch or maybe beyond that. So, but I will say anecdotally, no, it's been like I wouldn't be up here talking about it if the performance sucked, because that would be a non-starter for me. Yeah, I've been very, very pleased with it. And again, if you run into something that's extremely loop intensive, that just the V8 engine, even though it's great as it is, just can't give you that performance, downshift, put that little bit of code in a C++, call your buddies, if you don't know C++, who knows C++, ask them to help you with a hunk of code, and then integrate that in with your app. So to me, it's like having that option to be able to downshift is huge, huge benefit to this approach for certain types of apps. Okay, any other questions? Yes, sir, you up front. This is your first question, so
Yeah.
don't be shy.
Besides the UI,
Yes, sir.
if I use JavaScript, like doing a lot of asynchronous
Yes.
execution, will it be able to convert it to C++?
Yeah, so you're saying if you're doing a lot of asynchronous type calls, we'll be able to convert it to C++? Yeah, short answer is yes. They're deeply integrated.
I don't have to worry about it.
No, you can communicate from C++ to JavaScript and from JavaScript to C++.
It would create all that threadings for me.
Well, in that particular case, I don't know, actually. As far as
Point out that threading and asynchronicity are not the same.
yeah, as far as making asynchronous calls.
But sometimes it has to use threading to,
Yeah, so
if it's waiting for something to execute while it's executing something else.
sure. Yeah, so there are asynchronous calls built in for doing networking type stuff, and basically, it's if you call it synchronously, it'll do it synchronously. If you call it asynchronously, it'll do it.
I don't have to worry about it.
Correct. You don't have to worry about it. It does differ somewhat from XML HTTP requests because it's a different mechanism. But the idea of, do I want a blocking call or non-blocking call, like all that's taken care of. And in addition, if your application had, with the browser for asynchronous, you have limitations. You can't exactly just say, give me a new thread. You have web workers. Those have limitations. This actually gives you in your app, if you run into something where you could really just use an extra thread running, you can do that. So,
Buy and I could access all the hardware.
correct. Yes, you can access all the hardware.
Not a person that
Wait. Did you have one? You've been very quiet. Okay. You could ask a question like, why is this so awesome? Or Dave, why are you so awesome? I'll accept those. Those are good questions too, but I'll let you think about it. Just let me know. You can see me after. If you'd rather say that privately, that's okay.
I have some more difficult questions, but they don't have to do with the technical part of it.
Okay.
So when are the devices going to be out there, for example, for public sale?
Okay, and that's all. No. Yeah, so when are the devices going to be available for public sale? I would actually be in an awful lot of trouble if I were to share those things with you. I'm sure you can appreciate that. But you know, we have already spoken in the past about, you know, towards the first part-ish of 2013. So really not that far down the bend. But beyond that, I'm sorry, I can't get any deeper than that. Any other awkward questions? Go for it.
You can't give me an alpha device, right?
Yeah.
What operating platform? You already got one.
Okay. Okay. All right. One last question.
Again, back to performance.
Sure.
And a lot of other platforms, whether for politics reasons or other reasons, the JavaScript-based versions of apps, the hybrid apps, are often handcuffed, like
Yeah.
given JIT optimizations in JavaScript and so forth. What's BlackBerry's stance on that?
Yeah, our BlackBerry stance is that completely sucks, and we don't do it. So the question is, other platforms kind of cripple their JavaScript implementations, especially inside of WebView, which also means inside of PhoneGap and Cordova and anything else that would use that approach. For whatever political reasons, as you say, I don't know all of the reasons. I will say that many moons ago, when a certain new smartphone was debuted and said that the web was their SDK, I'll let you decide what company that was. No. It's Apple. It was Apple. It was Apple. Their first thing is, you know, the first stance was, you don't need apps. The web is your SDK. And when the iPhone launched, that was it. And as a web developer, I was all for that. And I noticed right away, things worked great. I had animation loops running. It was awesome. And then a couple months later, they did an OS update, and the timer resolution went down so much that I was getting, you know, 2 or 3 frames a second tops, which is completely unacceptable for developing, you know, the type of app that I was trying to create. They had the reasons for doing that. You know, I'm not going to debate that. That's not something that we get in the business of doing. We believe that whatever you can do through the browser, in our web stack, and as you saw from the HTML5 compliance testing, is a lot. You should be able to do all that same stuff, you know, wrapped inside of an app. And in fact, we encourage it. We want people to create HTML5 apps, put them in our catalog. You know, it's not a, I suppose we'll let you. We believe in it. You know, we want those apps in there. And well, for applications, so to build apps with HTML5. Yeah. Yeah, Blackberry World. App World. All right, thanks, guys. You got to clap loud, because there's lots of you. Thank you.